Look, I can't help but think that now might be a good time for a little fire and ice.
Oh, do not know it's never a good time for fire and ice.
What happens when you mix fire and ice?
Warm water, baby.
It's bubbling, baby. Warm water. Warm water.
That means we are live right now on Fire and Ice. You see, missing a little bit of ice. I'm bringing the fire, though. Mike Tipton here hanging out on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, all over the place. We've got some major announcements coming up here in just a second. Brandon the Iceman Cone, he is not here at the moment, but he should be joining us or might be joining us a little bit later. Still a little iffy on the totality of everything that he has going on right now. However, I will say that it's awesome seeing all the stuff that Brandon the Iceman Cone has going on. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to tell you all what it is that we're going to be doing as well. But I want to thank you all so much for tuning into the show right now. Shooting for this Friday, I'm going to be heading over to Las Vegas, so we'll see how that goes. Don't have tickets to the game, don't have anything like that, but I figured if there's a place where you can have fun without necessarily being at the game and get just a bunch of content, why not go to the beautiful city of Las Vegas, Nevada? So there we go. I'm gonna find a way to get out over there. Your boy knows how to schmooze people. Maybe I'll be able to get into a party, something like that. We'll see how some of that stuff goes. Okay, so some of the stuff that we have going on, some of the news that I wanted to announce and break today, it wasn't just that. It's the fact that next or later on this month, February 17th, Fire and Ice will be going live on Fox Sports 1380 every Saturday at noon. So not only will you be able to get us here on the various streams that we have going on, but you'll also be able to get us live on Fox Sports 1380. The stream audience is going to get something a little different than what the other audience is going to be getting on the radio, but the content and all that is still going to be basically the exact same. Okay. Glad about that. Excited to be going back over to Fox Sports 1380. It's been a lot of work in the making. As a matter of fact, as we're getting ready to do stuff today, I got my dude, Dave Halpern, hanging out with me. He is over in the other room. He is getting some stuff set up here because we are at the Just the Tip production studio in Central El Paso, where we record a couple of things. We got some other stuff coming up as well. It just seems like a long stream of announcements that we're going to be making over the month of February. But with all that said, let's go ahead and get into some of the sports stuff that we've got going on in the world today. The Pro Bowl happening today. I don't think anyone necessarily cares about that. Me, I know I don't care about it. So I'm not one that's going to be watching it. I'm also not one that's going to be hating on people whenever they're watching it as well. But I just, for the life of me, I cannot get into the Pro Bowl. It's just one of those things where it's kind of like, who cares about the Pro Bowl? But I will say one of the things that I do look forward to with the Pro Bowl is like the skills competition and the little competitions and things like that they've got going on with the surrounding the Pro Bowl, right? And that to me is what makes a lot of this stuff fun. Whenever you kind of watch football players and they break out of their normal shell and they're completely different people, and they're still kind of competitive but not as uber competitive as they normally are. What you see on the field, you get to see them let loose just a little bit, and it's nice to see them actually having fun, because I think that's one of the things that we as sports fans tend to forget about, is that this stuff should be fun. And a lot of the times we don't make it so fun for the athletes because we demand so much for them. But to see them out there just having a good old time, you got Peyton Manning and Eli Manning as the coaches of the NFC and the AFC. And, of course, there's always a little sibling rivalry that they have going on as well. One of my favorite parts about the whole thing was Eli asking Peyton, or I guess the broadcast team asking Peyton Manning about what he would do in returning punts. And Eli Manning, quick as a knife, just came out and said he's going to use his forehead, basically bouncing off that big old dome that Peyton Manning has that he calls a forehead. And that to me was just absolutely hilarious. I mean, you get a lot of that stuff with your sibling rivalries and all that. And it's awesome to see because they're on the other end of it, right? Like, they love each other, but they kind of pick on each other. Whereas Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce, they love each other. I don't know how much they pick on each other in in the open environment a lot of the times. But I will say it's awesome to watch those sibling rivalries that they have. Those brothers always kind of poking fun at each other and doing their own little thing. The coolest thing I think about, though, with the NFL Pro Bowl and everything that surrounds it is the fact that, like, this is All-Star Central time, right? The NHL hockey skills competition is happening. The hockey All-Star game and stuff like that is happening this weekend. We have the Pro Bowl happening this weekend, leading us to the Super Bowl. And then, of course, we are going to have, in a couple of weeks, the NBA All-Star Weekend, which to me is the best out of all of the All-Star games that are around there. None of them are perfect. I'm not a big fan of being one of those people that kind of complains a lot about the broadcast itself in general, like the dunk competition and stuff like that. I'm not one of the people that complains about a bunch of that stuff, but I am one of those people that kind of I want a little bit more. I wish there was a little bit more that came around with the NBA dunk competition, with the skills competition, all that stuff, because I want to see the biggest stars do it, right? And I feel like whenever Vince Carter last won the dunk contest, that was the last time we had someone who had a huge name in the dunk contest. You had a couple of people make their name, right, with Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine, but we never really had anybody like stand out and be like, oh, this is my contest. Like, I'm the superstar. I'm going to be going into this competition. And that's one of the things that I miss the most about what we have with like the dunk contest and everything right now. One of the cool things that I think is like that I'm looking forward to as far as the dunk stuff goes. So a little backstory, right? My birthday is here in February. The NBA All-Star Weekend normally happens around my birthday. This week, this time around, it's actually going to be on my birthday. And that's really exciting to me because I get to just sit back, watch all these things. So it's always had a little special place in my heart whenever it comes to the NBA contest and all the stuff that they have with that as well. But I'm super excited to see Steph Curry taking on Sabrina Ionescu from the New York Liberty with the WNBA. They're going to have themselves a three-point shooting competition, and it's going to be really awesome to kind of just sit back and watch that, because you're watching greatness with greatness. I can't wait for the day that maybe we get someone like Caitlin Clark to take on someone like Steph Curry. He's undoubtedly the best shooter in the NBA. I've got my my co-host for the day until Brandon the Iceman Cone joins me. I have my co-host for the day, Jericho, my son, hanging out with me. I told him to roll over to the table whenever he had something he wanted to talk about. So, Jericho, what is it you want to talk about, buddy? What's up? You got to talk into the microphone.
I know, but will the Dallas Cowboys return?
Will the Dallas Cowboys return to greatness? Probably not, at least not anytime soon. But I think that they are going to have, I think they're going to be a really good team next year. I think they're going to be a lot of the same, right? I don't see them winning a Super Bowl or anything next year, if that's what you're asking about. Is that what you wanted? Like, are the Cowboys going to win a Super Bowl? Is that your question? Yeah. I also feel bad too, because I didn't force Jericho to be a Cowboys fan. I'm not like one of those dads that's always like, oh, you got to follow the teams that I love. He just somehow became a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, and I feel like it's my fault for setting him up for a lifetime of heartbreak because they've done that to me. But at least I can say by the time I was his age, I watched them win 3 Super Bowls. They haven't done anything since, because he's the exact same age that I was the last time that they won a Super Bowl. So that's something that I got to think about in the back of my mind. But it's funny to me because he became a Dallas Cowboys fan without me pushing him in that direction. At least I don't think I did. And he's, I would say, a little more of a hardcore fan about the Dallas Cowboys than I am. Sorry. If you're going to do this as a career, buddy, you always got to make sure you drink enough water. Okay? You were going to say something else?
Who is better, the UTEP Miners or the Dallas Cowboys?
Oh, man, that's always the loaded question. Who's better, the UTEP Miners or the Dallas Cowboys? I will say that the Dallas Cowboys are a better brand. I think that I think everything about the Dallas Cowboys is better than the UTEP Miners. I say that as a proud UTEP alum. UTEP, let's see, Dallas hasn't won a Super Bowl in 28 years. UTEP hasn't won a championship in basketball, football, or anything like that since 1966. The last time UTEP won a bowl game, like just going to one of the bowl games, like how we have the Sun Bowl here every year. The last time UTEP won a bowl game was in 1967. So it's been a while for UTEP to have any type of winning tradition. And at least with the Dallas Cowboys, you know they're going to be competitive. They're going to be in the dance. They're going to make the playoffs every year. They won 12 games this year. They've won 36 games over the last few years. But you kind of wonder whenever it comes to the Dallas Cowboys what the future of the Dallas Cowboys is going to be. They just lost their defensive coordinator in Dan Quinn. He goes over to the rival team, the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders, to me, I don't get why Dan Quinn would get that job. I don't get why Dan Quinn got hired for that job, especially if you look at the body of work, the way that defense fell apart over the last few weeks of the season. And then, of course, the debacle that they had against the Green Bay Packers. But what I would say is that if Dan Quinn does coach at his best, this is a guy that we've seen got the most out of Matt Ryan, right? He made Matt Ryan an MVP, or at least he was the coach when Matt Ryan was an MVP. Then you look at what they've got with Washington, with Sam Hartman. Is he going to be the guy? And then you got to look at the assets that Washington has as well. They got the number 2 overall pick. So now you go from being the defensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys, being the guy that all of us thought was going to be the coach in waiting if something were to happen with Mike McCarthy, to now being on the team that most would say is Dallas's biggest rival. I think you got to win a couple of games before you call someone a rival. It's like that one-sided rivalry between the Red Sox and the Yankees. But I would say that it just doesn't seem to me like it was smart for the Washington Commanders to go out and hire Dan Quinn. I'm joined right now by my guy, Brandon the Iceman Combs. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us here virtually. You got a big old smile on your face. What are you up to today, buddy?
Oh, I'll tell you what, we got a great speech and debate tournament going on. It's a EPIST swing tournament, 2-day tournament here at Burgess High School. I have the beautiful pony in the background. And of course, I have some kids that are doing great things, competing in Congress and also competing in informative speaking. And these are a lot of very talented kids here from all over the city of El Paso. You know, I tell you what, these kids are phenomenal. And my student here, she just has a little bit of a break, got her a little nosh. And between the break, before the second round, we just had some time to come on and talk some sports with my best buddy on Fire and Ice.
I like it. I mean, I appreciate the stuff that you've done. Like my first year here, doing a bunch of this stuff, entering like skills competitions and stuff like that. I take my hat off to y'all that have been doing this for so many years. It feels like a nightmare at times. Okay. Well, I thought you were going to say something back, buddy, but it's all good.
It's because I couldn't hear you. You broke up. You broke up there. What? Remind me what you just said. I heard you say something about you were giving me praise and this and that, and that was it.
That's where you stopped. You're like, I heard all the praise. That's all I needed.
It's like, I didn't want to hear nothing else from you. Yeah, but you got nothing but love for you, brother. Yeah, it was that robotic shtick where I heard a little bit of this and that, and that was it, you know?
That's all good. We can go back to that some other time. Okay, so let's talk about what you think about the Dallas Cowboys losing Dan Quinn, their defensive coordinator, going over to their rival, the Washington Commanders.
Well, it's you can look at it from two sides of the coin, both perspectives. I'm going to look at it as glass half full because honestly, I mean, as much as Quinn did so much for them over the years, I feel that his defense was declining, especially in the postseason. So obviously, if you're Washington, you're getting a guy that's been to a Super Bowl and goofed, might I add, but you are getting a Super Bowl experienced coach who has a defensive mind. And that's what you need to do is improve that defense, among other things. As for the Dallas Cowboys, I think that this could be a good thing. And I ultimately say that because it's getting a little stale. And I'd like to see somebody like Rivera come in or maybe Vrabel. I think there's a lot of good defensive coordinator candidates that could take his place ultimately. And I must say that, I was one of those people where, yeah, the defense was great last year. Yeah, it was pretty good this year. But whenever you have a steadily declining defense the last 7 or 8 weeks of the regular season, especially in the postseason where they completely goofed against Green Bay, I'm not so sold anymore. So I think it was a good time for the two to mutually part ways. Let's put it that way.
I think it was a good time for them to part ways as well, just because sometimes the message gets stale, right? And I think whenever you look at what happened with the Cowboys, it's not that that defense quit on him. It's not that they don't have, amazing talents. It's just that for some reason the message wasn't being communicated out there the way that I guess everyone would like it to, right? But the one thing that I would ask you, Brandon, is if you're Washington, what does that necessarily mean? Because you've got so many questions with the Washington Commanders. You spoke about Dan Quinn's experience in the Super Bowl and in the playoffs. Last I checked, it was a historic loss that he had in the Super Bowl, losing a 25-point lead in about 15 minutes of game time. And then we look at the way that the Dallas Cowboys performed defensively this year, getting absolutely blown out by a team they should not have been blown out by. What is Washington getting here, and what can Dan Quinn do in Washington?
Well, if you're the Commanders, you are getting a guy who's at least had head coaching experience. You're not getting a rookie head coach. You're getting somebody that is going to come in there. He's going to know exactly what he wants to do. And let's face it, I mean, you had a 28-3 lead over New England. And yes, it was some bad coaching calls. And yes, it was also a combination of New England just, being the team they were and Brady and be able to make that historic comeback. With that being said, he's capable of at least getting a team to the Super Bowl. So certainly silver lining there is the man is not a rookie head coach. He comes in with a plethora of experience. And of course, really, let's face it, he is a decent defensive coordinator. Up until week 5, 6, or whatever of this season, we were praising the guy, and we were, blessed to have him another year. It's amazing he didn't leave last year, especially how highly ranked their defense was. And need not forget, this defense has been really good for a few years. Okay, so I mean, if I'm going to judge it by one game, yes, it was the biggest game of the season in the postseason where they completely goofed. Then ultimately you can criticize them and scrutinize them like it's going out of style. With that said, the Commanders are getting a guy that knows his stuff. He's a good players coach. He has some interesting schemes, and I think it's exactly what Washington needs to rebuild their team.
Okay, so with Washington hiring Dan Quinn, that means all of the coaching vacancies, the head coaching vacancies in the NFL are now, they're filled. Everybody's gotten a job, and that leaves a couple of people on the outside looking in, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick being the biggest names out there that don't have a job right now in the NFL. Is there a place where you see maybe Bill Belichick winds up going? Or, I mean, he's 15 wins away from breaking the all-time win record. Is there a possibility that we don't ever see that happen because he might not get on the team?
Yeah, I don't see him signing on with anybody this year. I think he's going to take a year off. I think he's going to reestablish everything. And really, he's a little long in the tooth. We know he's no spring chicken anymore. So that'll actually be a good year. He's going to pull a Peyton and take a season off. And then next year, he'll be ready for the taking. And I still predict that if he and Jones can somehow work something out and put egos aside for a minute, that I just don't see McCarthy doing anything special next year. And I think the Dallas Cowboys could be as any candidate as out there to pick up his services. So I think Belichick's going to take a year off. I think if anybody was going to pick him up at this point, they would have signed him. And obviously it's a long off season. But with that being said, I feel that he should be a prime candidate for the Cowboys. Now, I hope that McCarthy wins the Super Bowl next year. But who am I dreaming, right? But ultimately, I think that Belichick's taking the season off. I don't think anyone's going to hire him at this point.
And that's the only way McCarthy can keep his job, right? Like, it's not even just making it to the Super Bowl. He has to win the Super Bowl. That's the only way he's keeping his job.
You want to come on the show?
I'll add something.
I got a young man here. Where are you from? What high school are you from? Chapin High School. He's a speech and debate young man. He wants to, what's your name? Andres. He wants to ask you a question, Tip. Let's put Andreas on. Go ahead, Andreas.
All right, let's see what he's got.
So from my knowledge, the only way the Cowboys to get into the Super Bowl is if the coach buys them all tickets to go there.
I like this kid. He's a funny guy. He was making jokes earlier, and I told him, hey, Andres, you're a funny fella. So there you go. The high school students have spoken here at Burgess High School, and they know the Cowboys are crap, and they've never seen the Cowboys in a Super Bowl, right?
I also assume that he's got to be like a 49ers fan or like now a Chiefs fan or something like that, right?
Hey, Andres, who's your football team?
I don't want to say that.
He doesn't want to say. Why not? Tell us. He's a Broncos fan.
Oh, wow.
Say this though, right? There's a
Chiefs are in the Super Bowl.
So what I heard is that they're gonna make sure that the Super Bowl now gets hosted at Dallas.
Uh-huh.
Make sure no team ever gets a home team advantage.
Boy, this kid's funny, man. We got to have him on weekly, you know? He's as funny as you and I are. Gotta love these speech and debate kids. They're funny, man. They're witty.
No, 100%. I mean, that's the way it should be, right? You have to be able to have quick comebacks.
You got to
if
be
you're gonna
sharp.
in
You
that
got to
game.
be sharp to do this job. That's for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys, Mike McCarthy, everything that they've got with him, right? The
Yeah.
only way he keeps his job in Dallas is if he wins the Super Bowl. We know that that's not going to happen. So why not pull the trigger now?
Well, I mean, I was the one that said you should have already pulled the trigger. I don't know what the hell Jones is waiting for. I just don't think it makes any sense to bring and keep him on. Now you don't have your defensive coordinator anymore, and there's a lot of unknowns. Everybody's complaining. You know, there's a lot of griping going on, you know, with Dak Prescott and players and families, and should he be your quarterback for the future? And that's not good. And there's a lot of unhappy campers right now within the organization. And this is just the tip of the iceberg that you're seeing. Look, it was a very bad decision to keep McCarthy. He's not going to do anything next year. Sure, they'll win 12 games, and then there'll be the same outcome as it always is in the postseason. This team, this organization is going backwards. They're not going forward. Now would have been the time. There's so many great candidates available from the coaching spectrum. I specifically love Vrabel, you know, then maybe bring in like Derrick Henry. I also love, you know, Belichick. There's so many good guys out there, and they decided to stick with the same old stale Dallas Cowboys. And that's why they're going to continue to be America's garbage. I meant America's team. Sorry.
Okay, so this is what I wanted to ask you, Brandon, because we did hear from Jerry Jones that, quote unquote, we're all in this season, which I feel like you should always be all in if you're the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
What do you think that means? Because they do have some restrictions in salary cap, but as we know, the salary cap can be exceeded. You got luxury tax things like that. And I feel like Jerry Jones is going to say, you know what? Screw it. Let me throw as much money as I possibly can at this team to just win the Super Bowl this upcoming year. What pieces do the Dallas Cowboys need to add to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender?
Well, I clearly feel you have to upgrade the ground game because that team is it should go back to their old school ways, and that is run the ball. And Pollard was okay, but okay is not going to cut the mustard. So either in the draft or via a trade or free agency, you're going to have to go over and get a workhorse back. And that's why I really feel that, you know, Derrick Henry would be the guy. I think he's got a couple more years left. You need somebody that can really play the goal line well and do what Zeke used to do, and that's score touchdowns when you get down to the red zone. Also, clearly, in my opinion, you're really going to need to bulk up that defensive line. I know it's solid with Parsons, but ultimately you're going to need to put more pressure on the quarterback. You're also going to have to work on that secondary in the middle of the field, whether it be acquiring another linebacker or another DB, because again, they were vulnerable in the middle of the field. They were vulnerable on the deep pass. Now getting Diggs back will obviously help in that respect, and Bly is as good as they get. But ultimately, there's still some holes in that defense. And I certainly think, hey, you know what? The offensive line was good, but it could always be better. You know, so I think there's just so many question marks going into the next season for the Cowboys, and so many things that you're going to want to fix, because you know what? Being great, it's a work in progress, and there's just a lot of holes this team has to, like I said, that are patch up at this point, particularly.
Okay, so that's the thing, right? Like, I feel like this is a team that overachieved by a lot this year. I didn't think whenever they returned the team that they returned at the beginning of 2023 that this was a playoff caliber team. So I think they vastly overachieved to get to where they were. Look at that team, and I see all the holes that they have. Brandon, I don't know if you know this or not, but 16 different guys are going to be free agents this year, to include most of the offensive line, to include Tony Pollard, to include a bunch of like key pieces on the defensive line as well. And I look at this team and I just don't see how they can do it given the way the salary cap is right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, it's going to be a challenge because again, they're paying specific players a lot of money, and that's not, it's going to be easier said than done. If you can only make one or two dynamic moves, that is hopefully enough. If you look at historically these teams that make that big push from one year to the next, it's because they made that one or two big season, off-season acquisitions. So again, it's baby steps. I'm gonna try and get this player or that player, and ultimately improve my team. But to me, one of the main things is you have to improve that running game because they become a lot more one-dimensional. And you know what? If you can get another receiver to not make it a one-man game with Lamb, then even do that. But I mean, the point is that there are good players out there. There are players that you can get that will fit well in your system. You're not going to be able to fix it all, but maybe you get lucky and you address a few extra things in the draft, and ultimately then you're able to patch. Let's say you have 5 or 6 holes, you're able to patch 2 or 3 of them and improve that much.
Are you worried at all about the fact that the Washington Commanders now have Dallas Cowboys' former defensive coordinator, and now the Eagles have the Dallas Cowboys' former offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore? Does that make you worry at all?
What makes me worried is that McCarthy's still the head coach. That's what makes me worried more than anything else. I mean, look, that's the name of the game. That's were the Chiefs worried when they lost their offensive coordinator? No, they only went back to the Super Bowl again. Good teams will find a way. Good teams will make adjustments. Good teams will make excellent replacements. And if you look at championship contenders, you know what they do better than anyone else, Tip? A, they don't make mistakes in the postseason. Dak, excuse me. And B, they ultimately are the way they are able to conform to the changing times is a true definition of what ends up being from a great team, or from a good team rather, a mediocre team, to a great team. So Dallas can be good enough to make good replacements, their defensive coordinator and so on, then it shouldn't be an issue for them.
What are your thoughts on the Pro Bowl as we are on Pro Bowl weekend for the NFL? What are your thoughts on everything that's Pro Bowl related?
Is it over yet? I mean, I don't give two craps about the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl has become an absolute joke. And I don't tell you, I mean, years ago, it was, kind of a semi joke. It was in Honolulu. The players went to Hawaii. But now it's just a waste of time. Now it's an absolute waste of time. And I am absolutely, I could care less about the whole thing. That's my thoughts. I could care less about the Pro Bowl. You can keep it. I'm just ready for the Super Bowl week from Sunday.
All right, so there we go. We got the Super Bowl a week from Sunday. We will talk more about the Super Bowl coming up next week. I don't want to give away the picks right now because I'm pretty sure some stuff might change between you and I as far as who we're picking in the Super Bowl here. I think it's pretty obvious, given my background, who I'm going to pick in the Super Bowl, but we will see. Things might change here from then. Anything else, Brandon, that you wanted to talk about? Because I know you're busy. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah, Tip. No, I'm just excited for next week's show, and I wanted to make sure I came on for a few minutes here during our break. And as usual, you're doing a phenomenal job. I like the setting today, and we're gonna blow it up next week. Can't wait, my friend. And good luck to all the kids here competing in this very prestigious speech and debate tournament.
Yes, 100%. Good luck to the kids out there that are competing. I know how nervous sometimes you can get whenever you got to speak in front of a bunch of people, but I know that they've got a teacher like you, then they're doing a good job, and you're getting them prepared for where they need to be.
Appreciate you, Tip. We'll see you next week, buddy.
Yes, sir. Okay, so that was our guy Brandon the Iceman Cohn joining us here from one of the speech and debate tournaments going on at Burgess High School. That's awesome to see those types of things happening because those events are so important for the kids. It gives them real experience doing a lot of these things. And it's just great to see that. People that are teachers, they do phenomenal jobs, and they deserve a little more than what they get in terms of not just respect, but financially as well. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys. Let's talk a little bit more about the Dallas Cowboys. Let's talk about the NFL in general, right? You have a bunch of teams that have new head coaches. The Titans got themselves a new head coach. The Patriots have a new head coach. The list goes on, all the way down. Carolina, Atlanta, and then, of course, you've got the Washington Commanders and all these teams getting their new head coaches in. Whenever I look at these things, I try to think of it from a different perspective whenever it comes to people is what is it that team needs in order to be the most successful, to be at their most successful. And whenever I look at a lot of these teams, I see a lot of great draft capital. I see some teams that have a ton of salary cap space. And that to me is always the most important thing, right? Like how much salary cap do you have that makes it to where you are able to do what it is you need to do as a team. And then I look at the way that some salary caps are created, and I look at teams like the Kansas City Chiefs. And whenever I look at the Kansas City Chiefs and I monitor, their payroll, the Kansas City Chiefs payroll, whenever I'm monitoring all of those things, I just sit back and I think there and I look to myself, how is this team going to be able to survive going deep into the future? And the more that I think about it, the more that I wonder about this team with the Kansas City Chiefs. Jason Kelce, or Travis Kelce rather, is getting up there in age. The offensive line has been seeming to have some issues, and then of course the one thing that's going to really start becoming a problem is Patrick Mahomes' contract. I want to give a shout out to some of the people that are tuned in right now over on the Instagram feed. Of course, if you like the show and help the show grow, let's do that. Please share the show, do all the stuff. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, anywhere like that, please share the show. We greatly, greatly appreciate it as we try to get our audience a little bit larger here to do some of the things that we want to do going forward in the future. But whenever I look at the Kansas City Chiefs and I see this team in general, that contract of Patrick Mahomes is going to be the biggest issue for this team coming up in the near future, right? It's already the reason why they had to let go of Tyreek Hill. Imagine how much more explosive that team would be if they still had Tyreek Hill on the team. Then I have to think about that defense. It's a great defense. And you got a ton of players who are going to be on their last leg, basically, with the team because of the amount of money and salary cap restrictions. My guy, Evan George, asking me if I am going to still be the ring announcer for some of the Lucha stuff. Anytime they call me out, brother, trust me, I will be on out there. He's commenting over on Instagram, so if you want to get on the Instagram feed as well, that's at Mr. Tipton 33. Of course, that's most of my social media, at Mr. Tipton 33. And of course, anytime they want me to, my guy, I'll be on out there. I got no problems. I love announcing all the different events and stuff like that, the MC work that I've been blessed to be able to do here in the city of El Paso. But the Kansas City Chiefs, it feels to me like the window isn't shut, but it's on the way there, right? Like, this has to be a team that wins now. And I feel like all the pressure in the world is on the Kansas City Chiefs whenever it comes to performing in this year's Super Bowl. The next thing that I think about is, of course, their opponent, the San Francisco 49ers. This is a team that is really blessed in the aspect of they don't have a big name quarterback. They don't have a ton of money tied up in their quarterback. Brock Purdy is making the league minimum, and he is well outperforming that contract. What is Brock Purdy going to do in the future is going to be a phenomenal question, because he's going to want to be paid, and he deserves to be paid. So the question to me with the San Francisco 49ers is, how are you going to navigate that? Because we saw them trade for a bunch of talent. They've got Christian McCaffrey, who's going to have a contract coming up soon. They've got Chase Young, who's going to have a contract coming up soon. They've got Joey Bosa, or Nick Bosa, who's got a contract that's going to be coming up soon as well. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. These are all people who have a major contract that are going to be coming up looming. And of course, with Brock Purdy being the last pick in the draft, there isn't a lot of time that Brock Purdy is going to have on his rookie contract. I believe next year is the end of it. And then with that, what is this team going to look like? Whenever Fred Warner wants a little bit of money, a little more money, which he has deserved, right? The San Francisco 49ers are basically in the same boat with the Kansas City Chiefs, where the salary cap is going to become a huge issue as we move forward. I want to give a shout out to my dude, Danny Luke. I see that he's tuned in on Instagram as well. Remember, everybody, if you want to get in on Instagram, all you got to do is just send me a little link or request to join. We can get you in. You'll be part of the streams that we have over here as well. Still trying to find a way to kind of help everything work together, but we'll find our ways there pretty soon. So, of course, going back to the San Francisco 49ers, whenever I look at this team, I see an immense amount of talent. I see them being so blessed and so lucky. They got draft picks. They've got all kinds of stuff. Whenever they mess up on their first round draft picks, they're able to overcome it by having the last pick in the draft become a phenomenal quarterback for them. This is a team that's a very well-run organization. But if all the pressure to me is on Kansas City to try to win now because of what Patrick Mahomes' contract is going to become, I think the most pressure winds up being on San Francisco and their head coaching staff. This will be the second time that their coach, gets them to the Kyle Shanahan gets them to the Super Bowl, and he might not make it all the way, right? They might not win the damn Super Bowl. That's going to have to be something that gets weighed in the future. Is this guy can get you there, but can he get you over the hump? And then you have to look at the road that they had to the Super Bowl, beating an underwhelming, let's just call it what it is. I know they beat the hell out of the Dallas Cowboys, but an underwhelming Green Bay Packers team. That's not the way that you want to get to the Super Bowl. Beating the Detroit Lions, who had a lead on you, by the way. If you give up a lead like that to Kansas City early on in the game, there is no coming back from that, because Kansas City's defense is a completely different beast. Whenever I look at all of those teams, when I put those two teams head to head to each other, the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers, I know one team has to play perfect to win that game, and it's San Francisco. Is Brock Purdy going to be able to play a perfect game to beat the Kansas City Chiefs? I can look at the Kansas City Chiefs and say, you know what? They can have a couple of mistakes and maybe overcome those mistakes, because we've seen them overcome those mistakes all year around. And that's been their MO, right? Like, yeah, they've had some pretty bad games early on in the season, but this last month and a half, almost 2 months of the NFL season, they have been a dominant team, especially defensively. They were able to shut down the most dynamic quarterback in the NFL in Lamar Jackson. They were able to slow down. Granted, they had a little bit of help because of the weather, but this is also an offense that ran the ball extremely well in the Miami Dolphins. They were able to shut them down. This is a team that averaged almost 8 yards a carry, and Kansas City was able to shut them down. What San Francisco puts on here, and they hate I1, I believe is the name over here on Instagram. They say Purdy on top. I'm with it. There's nothing better to me than a story of someone who's not supposed to be there becoming a champion, right? So as much as I hate the San Francisco 49ers, because I am a Dallas Cowboys fan, a lowly Dallas Cowboys fan, I still love the story of, look at this fact that this dude is going to be able to possibly win a Super Bowl whenever he's not even supposed to be there. The last pick in the draft is very rarely even on the team, much less starting on the team in his rookie year and then into his second year, getting him to an NFC championship his first year, getting to the Super Bowl the second year, right? And then we can also think about it. This guy, had he not been injured last year, could have been in back-to-back Super Bowls against the Kansas City Chiefs, right? With everything we're talking about with Patrick Mahomes, with how great Patrick Mahomes has been, 6 years in the NFL, 4 Super Bowls that he's been to, 6 NFC title games. Brock Purdy's on that same exact trajectory, right? He's surrounded by a team, once again, that has a ton of talent. But we've seen this team have a ton of talent. We've seen this team make moves to get more players on their team. Christian McCaffrey, Chase Young. We've seen them be aggressive in free agency and be aggressive via trades. And now it has to pay off, because eventually those contracts are going to become so gigantic that you're not going to be able to sustain. Look at what happens, right? Whenever you have success, you lose not just players, but you lose coaches. And look how important that is for a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. An unstoppable offense that got to the Super Bowl last year, loses in the Super Bowl on what could have been a controversial call, and then out of nowhere falls off in the times where it got tough. Begin the season 10-1, and then end the season 11-7, and then bounced out in the first round by Baker Mayfield and them boys, a team that barely made it into the playoffs that everyone was laughing at because they won the weakest division in the NFL. That's how this stuff goes. What happened to that Philadelphia Eagles team? They lost a lot of players on defense. If I'm not mistaken, they lost 9 out of their 11 starters on defense, and they had to try to make that up. They go all over the place, and then now you get to see more or less what's going to happen, right? The same thing might happen with the San Francisco 49ers, because it needs to happen. They're not able to maintain salary cap wise the way that this roster is constructed. And the same thing's going to happen with the Kansas City Chiefs. I made the joke about this earlier this week to a couple of my friends. Travis Kelce is 1 year younger than Rob Gronkowski. Think about that, right? Yes, he and Patrick Mahomes have had an amazing run. They hate saying, is it just me or do the rest glaze on Mahomes? I don't think it's necessarily that. I think that, yes, they do get a lot of calls, but most teams do, right? If you're a really good team, you're going to get the calls. San Francisco has been one of the teams that's been a beneficiary of the calls. In the game against Baltimore, I know a lot of people were looking at that. You had a lot of roughing the passer. You had a lot of dumb stuff that happened. The majority of those penalties were just egregious, right? A clothesline across the face of the quarterback, unacceptable. Dropping your head to hit the quarterback in the face mask, unacceptable. And that's just normal stuff that we know as football fans, that most people should know as football players. And you most definitely should know if you are an NFL player, as how to hit the quarterback, when to hit the quarterback. And then, of course, the one thing that Mahomes has that I think most other quarterbacks don't have is the threat of just being the most dynamic player on the field. He's not as fast as Lamar Jackson. He doesn't have the arm that Josh Allen has, but he can throw at any angle. He's elusive enough to not get caught, and he's smart enough to know whenever he needs to get out of bounds. And he's also smart enough to know, okay, if I try to slide here, maybe I slide a little slow and I get hit late, and that's a penalty, and I help my team out a little bit more, right? That's the stuff that I love about seeing out of Patrick Mahomes. That's what I'm starting to see out of Brock Purdy. The way that he ran the ball, scrambled the ball, not the fastest guy in the world, but the way that he ran showed a completely different dimension against a Detroit Lions team that's not the best defensive team out there, but showed them a wrinkle that they could not overcome. That was something that was apparently shown up in the film during halftime that said, look, if you get this gap, run through that gap, and look how that changed the trajectory of that game for San Francisco. So to me, every team's going to get calls. Every team is going to be the beneficiary of stuff. Sometimes you're going to be the butt of the joke, right? Look at the Dallas Cowboys. The most penalized team in the NFL, they get one that goes their way with what happened against Detroit, right? Where the lineup was wrong. You're like, it wasn't the right call, but it just doesn't look right? It doesn't feel right. And we as fans kind of sit there and question, what is it that's really going on here with these teams? But I love that question because, yeah, I think people are going to start turning on Patrick Mahomes the way that we turned on Tom Brady, right? We get tired of greatness quick, unless it's our team. We get tired of greatness quick. And then eventually we're going to, come around and be like, you know what? Sometimes you just got to bow down to the greatness. I felt this as a Spurs fan with Kobe Bryant, right? I would watch Kobe, and especially early on, I was like, man, I want this kid to do well because I remember watching him airball shots from the top of the key in a playoff game against the Utah Jazz as like a rookie or a second-year player. Then he becomes Kobe Bryant, the Kobe Bryant. He becomes the start of the Black Mamba, that guy. And I looked at it and I said, I hate this because he's going up against my team in the division, right? How many championships could the Spurs have won if not for the LA Lakers? Is the way that I always kind of think about it. And then it just got to the point with Kobe Bryant, the same way it was with Tom Brady. They beat you over the head with being so damn good, with being so damn great that you have no other response but to say, you know what? You're right. You're really damn good. Like there's nothing else I can do. Watching Kobe drop 60 in his last game reminded me of why I thought that the dude was so great. Watching Tom Brady, his last couple of years, he wins a Super Bowl outside of New England, goes and wins it with Tampa Bay, then has one hell of a comeback that falls just short against the team that ultimately won the Super Bowl in the LA Rams. And it's just one of those things where you think about it with Tom Brady. Man, the dude went out on his sword. The same thing with Kobe Bryant. They went out on top in the game, and you just have to genuflect in their direction because they are so damn good. Like there's nothing else you can do. You can hate all you want, but eventually they're going to beat the mercy out of you, right? I think that's the trajectory that Patrick Mahomes is on right now. He's going to be one of those guys that, yeah, he might get the benefit of the call. And, yeah, people are starting to turn on him now because it just seems like he was so charmed in his existence, right? He gets drafted to one of the best teams in the NFL. The what if, though, the what if that I'll put out there for a lot of people. The pick that the Kansas City Chiefs got Patrick Mahomes on was traded to them from the Buffalo Bills. Would Patrick Mahomes still be as successful with the Buffalo Bills? And I think he would be, right? I just think Patrick Mahomes is going to be one of those guys that's great no matter what. You put him on the Cowboys are an automatic Super Bowl contender because he's got it up here. He's got the physicals of it. He's got it all. He's the most talented quarterback in the NFL. And eventually we're all going to sit back and realize there's no need to hate on that guy, just like there was no need to hate on Tom Brady, just like there was no need to hate on Kobe Bryant, any of that stuff. You just got to accept greatness as you're watching it, right? Okay. So going back to what my original point was going to be with the Super Bowl and the teams that are in the Super Bowl, it feels like the window is closing on both these teams. I know that's kind of sacrilegious to say because you got two teams that have been perennially great. But of course, I'll go back to what I had mentioned. Patrick Mahomes' contract is a beast. It's going to become a monster. It's a $450 million contract that is now starting to creep in with all of the weight of that contract. Danny Luke saying, we cannot forget this year Mahomes had no receivers. That's the main thing. That is the main thing that I think of whenever I look at Patrick Mahomes. His team led the NFL in dropped passes. Over 300 accumulative yards of dropped passes. The next closest team on that was, I want to say, Green Bay at like 95 total yards of dropped passes. Kansas City more than tripled them in dropped passes and potential yardage that they got. And now it seems like these guys are catching the ball all over the place. They hate saying, who do you think has the better quarterback or was the better quarterback, Joe Montana or Tom Brady overall? I think it's Tom Brady. And I'm not just saying that because, again, my disdain for the 49ers. I think that Joe Montana was great, right? But look at, again, the cast of crew that he had around him. He had Jerry Rice. Right? I mean, you had the greatest receiver of all time on your team. And, of course, you got to have the talent to get the ball over to him. You just can't be some scrub off the field throwing the ball up and hoping that someone's going to catch it. You got to be pretty good, right? But then you look at Tom Brady. And the fact that he was able to go from just being a guy that was a game manager, get us to the game, let our defense control it, to having one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL with that 18-1 season where they fall just short in the Super Bowl, going up against the Giants, where you had Randy Moss on that team, and he's just chucking the ball down there. That's where it showed you. You give Tom Brady a dynamic receiver, what he's able to do. Then he goes and, again, has next to nobody on the team, just a Rob Gronkowski held together with bubble gum and duct tape. And he's getting the ball, feeding the ball to that guy. A solid defense, but not a great defense because, again, money all over the place, right? Tom Brady goes down there and he does his thing. He wins 7 total Super Bowls, leaves the team, goes over to Tampa Bay, and then wins another Super Bowl with a different team. That's the difference between Tom Brady and a Joe Montana, right? Joe Montana was able to get the Kansas City Chiefs to an AFC championship game and nothing more. Tom Brady was able to get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that had missed the playoffs the year before, led by Jameis Winston, who led the league in interceptions, and then got them a Super Bowl win. Got a comment from my dude Hazelnut over there that got me off my game. I appreciate it, my guy. Always there for me whenever I need you. Got nothing but love for you, my dude. We got to hang out sometime very, very soon and celebrate some of the changes that are going on in your life, my guy. But yeah, like that to me right there is what makes it a no contest between Tom Brady and Joe Montana. I love the Joe Montana story. I think that Joe Montana is arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But Tom Brady is definitively, until Patrick Mahomes gets there, the greatest quarterback of all time. Danny Luke saying, maybe I missed it, but can you give us your score prediction for this year's Super Bowl? I will not. I am purposely not doing it because I'm going to do that next week. I am going to be, fingers crossed, I'm going to be driving to Las Vegas on Friday night whenever I get done with work, because my thought is I might not be able to get there with the NFL. I wanted to get on Radio Row. I wasn't able to get on Radio Row. I will be covering the draft. But my mindset was, if there's a place that you can go to where you don't have to be at the actual Super Bowl, it's Vegas, man. So I'm going to drive to Vegas. I'm going to take some cameras with me. I'm going to see what parties I can get into. I got a ton of my friends from whenever I was up at the mothership that are going to be over in Vegas as well. And if your boy's got to ride some coattails to get a life experience, believe you me, I'll do that. Danny, you know better than anyone else. I very rarely will ask for favors. This is the one time where I'm going to be like, look, it's Vegas. Why not? Why not try to throw it all there at the Super Bowl? The Super Bowl, Las Vegas, it just makes perfect sense. I want to meet a bunch of my people that are over there. So I'm hoping that maybe I can come back with some great footage, something that can put us out there, separate us a little bit from that as well. For those of you that might have missed the announcement earlier in the show, Fire and Ice is going to be live on Fox Sports 1380 every Saturday starting February 17th. We're going to be live at noon. And we're going to see how well we can get this thing to ride. We're trying to do more and more, not just for ourselves, but of course the city of El Paso, as far as putting sports and everything like that on the map. We'll hopefully have our phone lines and all that stuff as well. You can join in on all the various social media. And that's the type of stuff that I think is going to separate us from some of the other places that are out here. And of course, you got my crazy ass doing whatever it takes, driving to Kansas City for the NFL draft because of a flight being canceled, driving to Las Vegas this time on just a whim because I thought to myself, why the hell not? Let's go out there and see what it's like in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. It might be a long-ass drive, but I got a fast car, and it's going to definitely be worth it. Danny, I appreciate you, my guy, saying, you know what, I deserve it. I'll never say that I deserve any of this stuff. I feel so blessed to have met people like y'all that have been on these chats and have gotten to watch the growth of the show. My dude, David Halprin, who's across the window right now, getting some stuff set up for us as we get this studio here a little retrofitted with some pretty cool stuff for some of the other shows that we're going to be running on here as well. I got so much more announcements, my guy. You got no clue what's happening here. I've got so many cameras. I got different lights. I got all kinds of stuff, man. You got to come check out the studio sometime, Danny. I'm just telling you, my guy, we got to get that Tip and Hobes one more episode in, brother. We got to do it. Maybe Detroit for the NFL draft. Putting the pressure on you, my guy. Okay, so there it is, right? I'm not going to give you my picks for the Super Bowl because I want to be in Vegas whenever I do my Super Bowl. Whenever it comes to prize picks, of course, I'll give you all some picks, right? I'm not watching the Pro Bowl. Nothing worth watching there. Whenever it comes to the NBA, I'm just waiting to the All-Star break. Then we'll start getting a little deeper into the NBA. I love what I'm seeing with the Spurs and Victor Wembanyama. It hasn't resulted in wins, but I'm super excited about what they've got for their future. My dude Hazelnut, I know you're a huge Dallas Mavericks fan. They won that trade between trading Trae Young for Luka Doncic. Luka is the truth. I can't remember who I heard the other day say that Luka was on the same level with Jordan and LeBron. He might not be at this moment, but at the end of the career, who knows, man? That guy is so damn good. I am so jealous that I have to it's almost like we're watching what was in the past, right? Whenever you had the battles, those epic battles between Dirk Nowitzki and Tim Duncan, it feels like we're about to get back into that, right? You got Luka Doncic and Victor Wembanyama, two unicorn basketball players that are just phenomenal. Like I cannot wait to see whenever Wembanyama finally gets it, whenever it clicks with Wembanyama, that he's the most dominant player on the court. I cannot wait. To see what happens whenever Victor Wembanyama and it clicks. It's going to make me so happy as a Spurs fan. I cannot wait. Want to give a shout out to my friends, Eldo Soccer as well. El Dorado High School soccer team. They're doing some amazing stuff out there with El Dorado. It's amazing to kind of see the way that they bring the spirit at El Dorado High School. It's really awesome. They are the tip of the spear, or the tip of the arrow. Maybe we should say that with the Aztecs. The tip of the arrow when it comes to El Dorado High School. But everybody, I want to thank you so much for tuning into the show. I want to thank Jericho, who got to be a part of the show a little bit, my son, asking me questions about the Dallas Cowboys, driving the knife a little deeper into my heart that my team is a huge disappointment, but I've got nothing but love for him. Everybody, I got nothing but love for y'all as well. And I will see you all next week, hopefully from Las Vegas.